Why didn't anyone tell me that the hardest part about being HIV positive isn't actually getting diagnosed, but trying to move on with your life after? Obviously, getting diagnosed with HIV was the most difficult news I'd ever received in my life. The person that I was up until that moment died. What is the purpose of my existence now that everything that I thought I was is no more? And y'all, it's about to be 6 years since I got diagnosed. It's crazy how fast time flies. And finally, the light bulb went off for me. Because up until a little while ago, I did not know how to move on with my life. Now, if you guys have been following my journey for a while, you guys are probably saying like, Bianca, what are you talking about? You're an advocate, a mother, a wife. You found love under the most socially challenging circumstances possible. It seems like you moved on pretty well. While I am extremely thankful for the blessings that God has given me, I am not my blessings. I am my fruit. You see, getting diagnosed with HIV is not so different than becoming a wife or falling in love. Hear me out now. If someone asked me a month ago, Bianca, who are you? I would have said, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, and I'm HIV positive. But that is not who I am. It's what I am. And may God forbid, but all the whats that I am could one day disappear. That's actually what I encountered the day that I was diagnosed with HIV. I created my identity surrounding all these whats. The car that I drive, the amount of money that is in my bank account, the people that I know, the men that like me. I built my identity around those things, and then on that day, it all came crashing down, and I was left with, who in the world am I even? And who you are takes a lot more effort to discover than just a series of events that happen to you. So today I'm going to share with you how I moved on with my life while finding my identity being HIV positive. Now I'm not going to lie to you, the first thing I did was what any good millennial will do, and that is to go ask Google. Everywhere I looked said the same thing. In order to find your purpose, you must first find your values. And let me tell you that for a woman like me who has experienced so much trauma repetitively throughout her entire life, sadly, I didn't have any values. Values are the beliefs and principles that guide a person's actions and decisions. They're basically like anchors, keeping you grounded and preventing you from wandering too far off from who you believe you are at your core. Before getting diagnosed with HIV, I lived in fight or flight. The decisions I made were based on my trauma responses, which basically meant that these values went out the window the moment the most trivial circumstance or the most smallest inconvenience posed a threat to my existence. It is hard to be honest, loyal, or responsible when every second you're just trying to survive. Moving on with your life often requires a sense of direction, but how do you move forward when you don't know where you're going? This is how I moved on, and hopefully this can help you move forward too. Even though I didn't have values at the time, I did have areas in my life that were in desperate need of improvement. That is where I decided to start. The first area that I chose to focus on was the most important area. On this pillar, the other two are sustained. This is my cornerstone, if you will, my relationship with God. I spent my whole life trying to figure out who I was. Turning to God felt like my first time exhaling. I finally could stop pretending like I was okay. I dropped the facade and allowed myself to accept that God knows the real me. Oftentimes people say like, oh, I allowed God to get to know me. God already knows us. It didn't matter how much I tried to hide my true self. People see our actions, but God sees the heart. You can fool people, but you will never be able to fool God. And though I'm still on this journey of surrender, acknowledging Jesus has given me direction. Focusing on my relationship with God for me looked like starting to pray again, reading the Bible. Literally the last time I picked up the Bible was maybe 10 years ago. Now I actually enjoy reading the Bible. Last year, I went back to church for the first time in 8 years. And most significant was choosing sobriety. The moment I stopped smoking weed, I began to hear God's voice clearly. My next area of focus that needed attention was my relationship with others. Falling in love is easy. Staying in love is the hard part. 2 years after giving birth were the hardest in my relationship with Joel. I felt jealous that Joel could go back to work while I stayed at home. Let me be honest. I felt so jealous that he even had a career to go back to. I'm a retired stripper who's a college dropout with the child who's also HIV positive. What can I possibly do with my life? Instead of taking that energy and putting it into a project or something that could better my situation, or even better yet, going to God and giving him these feelings that I had, I began to hold resentment towards Joel. Date nights became less frequent and I started to feel like a prisoner in my own home. Not to mention, I wasn't doing so good at this whole gentle parenting stuff. I was drowning in mom guilt and felt so distant from the man that I loved. Honestly, we almost lost it all. But last September, I finally surrendered my relationship with Joel to God. Joel and I are beyond the if it's meant to be prayer, so I had no choice but to go to God and ask him to help me love him even when I don't want to, even when it's hard, even when I feel like he doesn't deserve it. I told you, God is the pillar that holds all of this together. After much prayer and fasting, our relationship is the most fun it's ever been. And that's saying a lot. That same prayer was prayed over my relationship with my daughter, Jewel. I am most thankful for how my love in action for her has grown because I see how she trusts me now and how safe she feels around me. There is still much work to do, yet I am grateful for the direction in which it is heading. Lastly, I am focusing on my relationship with myself. This is last not because I care about myself least, but because I found that I feel the best about myself when I'm honoring God and treating the ones that I love with compassion. When the first two areas are in order, I have the mental and emotional capacity to focus on my personal goals. Lately for me, that has been to have a better relationship with food while losing weight. I recently discovered or admitted that I was flirting with an eating disorder. I would stress eat and I would binge eat. And there were times that I stuffed myself so much that I ran to the bathroom to make sure that it all came out. It didn't happen all the time, so I convinced myself that there was nothing wrong. But one day the Holy Spirit convicted me and reminded me that my body is his temple. How could I love and honor the Holy Spirit that is residing in my body when I'm not honoring or loving my body the way that I've been called to? I prayed, of course, and in the last 4 weeks, I've lost 12 pounds and 1 inch off my waist. I'm eating whole foods now and looking at food as a source of fuel instead of a source of comfort. I work out about 4 to 5 times a week and I'm walking about 30 minutes every single day. This is really how I've moved on from my most traumatic moment. I didn't focus on possessions or titles because though they may come, they may also be taken away. Moving towards the life you want occurs when you cultivate what matters. So the question is, what matters to you? What relationships would make you feel more whole if you tended to them? Discovering who you are, I believe, is a lifelong journey. Sometimes it takes years before the seed you planted finally begins to bloom. Does that mean that we stop planting seeds? Does it mean we stop tending to our garden? No, we prepare. We rip out the weeds. We water the soil. We become intentional about the qualities that make us who we are and we cultivate them. We develop them. Do you find yourself angry all the time, filled with resentment, bitterness, depressed? Maybe it's time you see a therapist. Maybe it's time you start journaling. Maybe it's time that you go out for a walk before you get on your phone. The point is to start small and remain consistent. Instead of looking in the mirror and not recognizing the reflection I see, now I look and I see Jesus. He is my compass. You are not the worst thing that has happened to you. You are who God says you are. You are loved. You are worthy. You are forgiven. You are chosen. I wonder what our world would look like if we all started walking around believing like we were loved, believing like we are worthy of the thing we desire most. Who would you become? Only God knows. And I hope you get to find out. I love you and God bless you. See you next time.